Here dwelled in a castle in Brittany a young baron who was much beloved of his king, and a good friend he was to him. This baron had a wife, very fair and sweet, to look upon, but quite otherwise in her heart, for though she smiled on her lord and spoke loving words, she cared not for him. All her heart was given to another knight, and she longed only that she might be rid of her lord and wedded to that other. For 3 days out of every 7, the baron would be absent from his castle, and neither his lady nor any of his followers knew where he went or what he did during that time. The lady thought long on this, and wondered how she might turn it to her advantage. One day, with many smiles and caresses, she said, "There is a favor I would ask of you, dear lord, the Baron Smejed." "There is nothing I can deny you, as well you know," he said. "Then do not leave me for 3 days out of every week, for I am lonely when you are gone." The baron turned away from her. He was no longer smiling, and his voice was troubled. "I would stay with you if I could, but alas, I cannot." "Tell me where you go," she said. But he would not. Yet she coaxed and pleaded, weeping and protesting that he could not love her if he did not tell her, so that at last he could bear it no longer, and swearing her to secrecy, he said, "Through no will of my own, I am a werewolf. 3 days out of every 7 must I spend as a wolf, running wild through the forest, a savage beast." "How does this change take place?" or asked his lady. "In the forest, I put off my garments and lay them where I may find them again, and then I become a wolf. But when the 3 days are past, I clothe myself, and I am a man once more." Cunningly she asked, "Dear lord, where do you hide your garments when you are becoming a wolf?" "That, dearest, may I never tell to anyone, for if I could not find them when the 3 days were done, then I should have to remain as a wolf forever, or until my garments were restored to me." Inwardly, she rejoiced when she heard this, and from that moment gave him no peace, forever asking him the same question, and swearing that it was for his own good that she asked, and because he trusted her and believed her true, he told her at last. In the forest stands a ruined chapel, and nearby, hidden by a bush, is a hollow stone. There do I hide my garments. His lady kissed him, and said she was proud to know how much he trusted her, and she swore his secret would come to no harm with her. But the very next time that the baron left his castle to go to the forest alone, she sent for the knight whom she loved, and told him all. And she bade him go to the hollow stone by the ruined chapel, and bring away her husband's garments. Greatly rejoicing, the knight did so, and she hid them in a coffer. When the 3 days were past, and the baron in his wolf guise came to the hollow stone, and found his garments gone, he knew his lady had betrayed him, but there was nothing, underscore that he might do to help himself, for if he but showed himself beyond the edge of the forest, men would loose hounds on him, and come against him with stones and cudgels, so that his life was likely to be quickly lost if he did not remain in the shelter of the trees. When the weeks passed and the baron did not come home, his lady wept a little and exclaimed a lot about the faithlessness of the lord who had abandoned her, and then she was married to the knight she loved, well pleased with the way things had gone. But the wolf roamed in the forest, slaying and devouring, after the manner of wolves, and ever grieving, until a year had passed, and one day the king chanced to hunt in that forest. The hounds came upon the tracks of the wolf, and, baying and impatient, they followed him. All day the hounds trailed the wolf through the forest with the king and his courtiers close after them, and in the evening the wolf, weary and torn by the thorns and the brambles, could go no farther, and he turned at bay, sure that his end had come. Then suddenly, beyond the ring of panting hounds, the bared fangs and the lolling tongues and the eager eyes, he saw the young king who had once been his friend. With his remaining strength he fought his way through the hounds, and running to the king, placed one paw upon the king's stirrup, and laid his head upon the king's foot. Growling, the hounds came after him, but the king, much moved, beat them off, and called to his companions to leash them. "This poor wild creature has asked my mercy," said the king. "He shall have it. Let us go and leave him free in the forest." And he turned and rode for his castle. Yet the wolf would not leave him, but limped along painfully beside his horse, even to the castle gates, so that all who saw marveled at it. "He has asked my protection," said the king. "He shall have it for so long as he pleases." And he forbade anyone to harm the wolf, and ordered fresh meat to be provided for him daily. And for his part, the wolf harmed no one in the castle, being ever gentle with everyone, and he followed the king like a dog. For had the courtiers not once been his companions in the jousting and on the tourney ground, and had the king not been his friend? By day the wolf was always at the king's side, and at night he slept at the foot of his bed. And the king took more delight in his wolf than in any of his hounds. Soon after, the king called all his vassals to court, and there he took counsel with them, and after feasted them richly. Now, among those who were summoned was that same knight who had married the baron's false lady. And when he and his followers came before the king, the wolf growled and leaped upon him, throwing him to the ground, and was restrained from doing him great hurt only with difficulty by those who stood around. The king was surprised, for until that moment the wolf had harmed no man. Yet it happened not once, but 3 times that he leaped upon the knight, and was beaten off by the knight's friends, so that from fear that the knight or the wolf might be harmed, the king was forced to keep the wolf chained until the knight was gone from the castle, which he was glad to do as soon as he might, wondering much and not a little fearful. It chanced, a few months later, that the king hunted again in the forest where he had found the wolf, and he lay for the night in a hunting lodge on the edge of the forest, close by the lands and the castle that had belonged to the baron. The baron's false lady, wishing to win favor for herself and her knight, rode in the morning from the castle, richly attended and bearing gifts for the king. But no sooner had she come into the presence of the king than the wolf gave a great howl and leaped at her throat, so that she cried out in fear. In an instant, every man there save the king had drawn his dagger and hastened to defend the lady, and the wolf would surely have been slain, had the king not cried out to prevent it. Then the king, holding the wolf dose in his arms, so that he could neither be harmed nor do harm, said slowly, "This is the lady who was wife to that baron who was once my friend, and who went no man knows where, and the knight whom my wolf attacked. He is the second lord of this lady, and now rules the lands which were once my friends." And he ordered the lady and her knight to be bound, and they were locked away in a dungeon. And there in the cold and the darkness, with little to drink and less to eat, the lady in her terror confessed her crime, and told where she had hidden the baron's garments. Immediately, the king sent for them, and when they were brought, he laid them before the wolf, while all watched to see what might happen. But the wolf looked at the garments and made no move. "He is no more than a wolf," said the courtiers. "The good baron is lost to us forever." But the king said gently, "It would be a great shame to a knight to turn from a wolf to a man before the eyes of so many." And he rose and took up the garments, and went to his own bedchamber with the wolf following him. And he laid the garments on the bed, and came out from the room alone, locking the door behind him. After a little, while he called 2 others, and they went together to the bedchamber. The king unlocked the door, and they entered. And there on the king's bed lay the baron, asleep. And no man could have been happier than the king in that moment. The false lady and her knight were driven forth from the kingdom, and the baron regained his castle and his lands. But most of his time he spent, whether as a wolf or as a man, at the court of the king.